Welcome back to Honey Badger 3D Print and Paint, guys. Today we're at the TCT Show 2021. So we're going to be splitting this video into a few separate parts for you guys. So first of all, we're going to do some sort of 15 to 20 second shorts. Stall will go over sort of the broad range of what they do, and we'll condense that down into one video. And then we're going to do a set of separate videos that are going to go through some stuff in a little bit more detail for you. Go through some of the exciting things those companies have got coming. Got some things that they're showcasing at the show. There's lots and lots of different stuff here. So for anyone who hasn't been before, this is a real mixture, the TCT show. So you've got a lot of industrial application, you've got a lot of SLS, you've got new technology, you've got new suppliers, new types of filament, new material types, and all sorts of things. So before we get started, roll those credits. Yeah. Okay, so we're back with Creality, guys. So let's take a little bit more in depth. So everybody on the channel knows about the Enders and the CR10s that really were Creality's bread and butter when they came out. There's two main machines that we want to try and focus on today. So the first is the Hallett series. So this is Creality's sort of delving into the MSLA market, isn't it? So why don't you tell us a little bit about this and their wash and cure station as well?
So these aren't actually Creality's first SLA printers.
Okay.
They've been in it before with their LDO series.
Right, okay.
But these are the latest and greatest web-enabled fancy machines that they've got on offer, really. So you start off with the CL89. So you can connect to this with your phone. You can run a camera from it.
Right.
So you can watch your prints in progress. You can see them rise out of that like a phoenix, rising from the ashes sort of deal.
So these all app enabled as well. Like, can you use the Creality?
So there is a Creality Cloud app.
Yep.
On your phone. So you get that, and as long as you can upload your files to it, slice, support, do it all while you're sat in the office, bored out your mind.
Nice. So we've got sort of the traditional size MSLA, which is the 6-inch, and then they've also brought out the 8.9 in line. They brought out the big guns as well with that as well. So dual linear rails, a ball screw, the whole 9 yards. So they've not just brought out the cheapest machine they could buy, something like a Photon. They've brought out the best machine they could build, which is something like this.
They 210, when they go in hard.
Yeah. So whilst we're talking, shall we go over and have a look at the Ender 7 as well, which is the latest and greatest FDM machine to come from Creality. Back with Creality, we're looking at the Ender 7. So this is Creality's first venture into the real Core XY market. Second.
The Ender 6 was also true Core XY.
The Ender 6 was also true Core XY. But this one is you guys pushing it a little bit further, isn't it? So you're all linear rails, your nice big chunky belts, and you're pushing out some pretty serious speeds with this,
can hit 250 millimeters per second, just like with no issues. We've got it on 200 a minute.
Yeah.
As you can see just there.
Yeah.
Some insane speed comes off of that.
So have Creality thought about bringing out the Joel version, where you just take an angle grinder to the front and cut out the logo?
I don't think they've done that quite yet. I'm sure you can make some modifications if you felt like it.
So with this one, what was sort of the reason why you wanted to carry on refining in this space? Because sort of the CR series has been sort of an area of focus for you for a while.
I think the thing was, people were getting bored of the Ender 6. People were getting bored of the Ender 5. So they thought, why not? Let's just combine them into one way better machine.
Yeah. So is this still running Marlin, or is this on Clipper, or
this is on Creality's custom firmware?
Creality's custom firmware?
Yeah, they've stopped using Marlin now. They're on all their own touchscreen firmware. It's all Creality logos when you turn it on.
Right, okay.
All sorts of fancy shenanigans, really.
Nice. Okay, fair enough. So again, I mean, 250 millimeters a second is a relatively serious achievement for any machine.
Considering your average machine is about 60.
Absolutely.
It's going to do 200 no issue.
I mean, we're talking Delta speeds at that point.
Yeah, it's,
you know,
it's
and that was sort of Delta's only really redeeming feature, was that you could go super fast with it. Yeah. And now the Core XYs are coming in.
I believe it's the second fastest printer on the market.
Wow. Okay, that's fair. I mean, I've got a Voron.
Yeah, that's the first,
and I mean, you can do like 250, 300, and I've seen people doing like ridiculous, like 700.
I've seen up to 1,000 on the Vorons.
Yeah, and the VZ bot as well. which is so the VZ bot is a side note to this piece, by the way. So the VZ bot is it's a core section. So he took like a Tronxy frame.
Yeah.
And then he put all carbon fibre ex-gantry on it, and he
make it as light as possible.
Make it as light as humanly possible. And then he's got these giant fan ducts that come up at the side and blow directly across the build plate, because he's got a high flow mosquito on the top, and he's throwing down 1,000 millimeters a second on it. Like, the thing's insane.
Oh yeah.
I'll put a link in the video description to that one.
It is a monster.
But it's an absolute beast. But back to this.
For home use, out the box, 200 millimeters per second.
And I think that's where Creality really shines, isn't it? It's the, okay, you can go and build a Voron if you want to build one, or you can go and build a VZ bot or a custom machine, or you can go out and buy like a super high-end machine. But the reality is that out of the box printing, it is hard to beat.
It's quick.
Yeah, it's quick, it's quiet, it's good quality.
It took me 10 minutes to assemble, and that included a phone call in between.
Yeah, and you know, and you just can't beat stuff like that. When you you know, and I mean, bearing in mind the speeds that it's doing, the quality's bang on. Like, it's printing that nicely.
Yeah, but this is the same model printed on the same G code, and just look at that.
Yeah, and again, you just can't. I mean, there's not really any major faults in that.
We did have a power off earlier, so that's why there's a bit of a layer line, but
right, okay.
It does have power off resume, so
yeah. Is it Bosch-like glass thing? Yeah, it is. Yeah, the ultra base stuff. Yeah. All right, fantastic.
Really
Thanks very much for joining us.
No problem.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll catch you on the next one. All right. Okay, guys. So we're here with Ultimaker, the shiniest stand in at the TCT show. So there's an awful lot to unpick here, right? Because the core of this is the S5. And then we have the very expensive cupboard that is lit and has multi-material in it.
It does.
And then we have the dehumidifier piece as well. So does this all come as a singular kit that you buy? Is it modular? Like, where are you?
So, as Ultimakers always wanted to be flexible to the users and, you know, tailored to their solutions, you can actually buy all of these three pieces individually. So you can buy just the S5 if you want. If you want just an S5 and an Air Manager, for example, if you're only printing a couple of materials and you're never going to need that, or you can buy all three at once as a pro bundle,
right?
Which we would definitely recommend. You know, you get the full printing experience, nice safety contained for the office environment, nice easy material change and unloading, no more faffing around going around the back and having to struggle to change materials.
So you've got the S5 here, you've got the sort of little cousins of the S5 over there with the S4, and I'm assuming the S3.
So you've got the S3, and that is actually the 2 Plus Connect.
The 2 Plus Connect, obviously.
So which is an iteration on the long-standing 2 Plus, which was, you know, multi-award winning in every category. And we've basically put Wi-Fi in it, made it more school accessible by putting an Air Manager on top and a door on the front of it.
So with the multi-material tray, does that only work with the S5 bundle, or is that with the S4 and with the, the 2 Plus?
The material station is just for the S5 at the minute, just for the S5. We did look at it for the S3, but as you could only probably fit 4 materials in there, and you can already fit 2 on the back of it, there wasn't necessarily as much clamour for it.
So I mean, you've got dual nozzle up here, so obviously you can do multi-material prints, but then as you said, it can also do, so is this working similar to like a palette where it's splicing and putting things together, or is it working like, is it more like an MMU on a Prusa where it's switching over?
It's not like a palette, no. Unfortunately, we can't do mosaic printing, which would be a lovely feature. But you can do 2 materials, so you can either do dual build material, dual colour, or, you know, flexible and a solid part, or you can do your build materials and your support materials as well, as you've been able to with your breakaways, your PBAs, and then your acquisitions into the material alliance.
So I mean, Ultimaker has been the sort of the shining star of sort of prosumer, consumer level 3D printing for some time. You started out competing against the likes of sort of the Replicator when that first came out, and the MakerBot and things. And whilst those guys have sort of fallen to the wayside, you've managed to stay in the forefront of people's minds as the printer that needs to be beaten. In that, are you as good as an Ultimaker but more expensive, in which case what's the point? Or are you as good as an Ultimaker but cheaper, and if so, how and why are you lying? So it's the how have you maintained that level of sort of innovation and that level of complete kits throughout that amount of time. It's a long time to be sort of fairly dominant in
customer
the printing.
focus.
It's just about focusing on
customer focus. Speaking to the customers, finding out what you want, being open source. It's a massive factor for us. You know, working with all the Material Alliance partners that we do have, you can now print over 250 materials on this machine, which is, you know, second to absolutely no one in the market. You've got our software integrations, so you can plug from Autodesk directly into Cura. You can go from that package straight into Cura. It'll do your slicing for you.
Yep.
Same with SolidWorks. We're now working with companies like Teton to do, smart slice simulation and things like that. So you're moving on from just your basics of the software. And again, that's all through being open source and collaborating with other partners in the industry to see what the user wants. We've always wanted to make 3D printing an addition to the workflow, not the change to everyone's workflow. So, instead of it being a CNC machine at the end of the Autodesk process, it's a 3D printer, and that's absolutely where Ultimaker's aim to be.
And that's ultimately, that's the 2 points that we make consistently on the channel. One, stop trying to make your own branch of Cura because you're terrible at it. Whoever you are, it's pointless. That's Lowesbot, that's Creality, that's G-Tech, that's everyone who makes a branch of Cura. Your version is objectively worse. So stop doing that because theirs is free anyway. And the second is anyone who says that open source can't work, it clearly can. Clearly open source can work. You can still maintain a profit model, you can still retain IP, you can still innovate in the space and be dominant. So open source and stop making your own slices because they're all awful. You know who I'm talking to, Creality. Stop it. Thanks very much for joining us, guys. We'll see you on the next stall. Thanks very much, mate.
No
Cheers.
problem.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, welcome back to Honey Badger 3D Print and Paint. So we're with Photocentric, taking a look at the Opus. This thing is massive. It's one of the largest sort of prosumer level 3D printers that you can buy today. The screen is huge, like it's a 14-inch screen. What's the build volume on this?
So it's 310 by 174 by 220.
So that is giant. I mean, just for context, you could print my entire head in here, which is what I need from any printer. They're gonna have to clean that now, and that's my fault. So, I mean, there's a lot of this is clearly sort of more industrial aligned in that you've got huge ball screws in there, and
I mean, it's a top of the range linear rail. So very, very sturdy. We've got a couple of 3D printed parts in here. This knob here is 3D printed on Opus itself. We've got a nice vat with a pouring spout in the corner, making it easy to empty.
So how much resin does it take to fill the vat? Because I'm just thinking this has got to be 2 or 3 litres worth of resin.
No, it's a good question. Yeah, I mean the minimum is 500 grams. That's the minimum you need to do a print. You could print it. You could fit about 4 kilos in that. So,
this vat, guys, this is giant. This is a good, an inch thick all the way around the outside. So I'm assuming the FEP is changeable.
Yes.
But what's the lifespan of a lot of the consumables in the machine?
Yeah, so obviously it's going to depend how you look after it, and we do recommend that you check after each print to see, make sure you haven't got any foreign bodies in there, any pieces of cured resin. So you probably want to change it every 20 prints. May go to 30, may go to more than that, but it will depend a little bit how you use it.
Fair play.
And you'll get used to it. And
so unlike with your Magna, which people can see in the background, that's an absolute beast. The Magna is daylight resin, but this is sort of more traditional consumer level resin of the 405.
Yes, exactly. And that's why it's more open source. So if you have
absolutely.
a favourite, in particular with dental, I guess, if you have a favourite class 2 resin, maybe to make dentures or something that we don't have in our range.
It makes perfect sense. So then this is coupled with your slicer. So so you have the Photocentric suite that does all your slicing for you and everything. So does that all come as do you buy it all as one package? Or how does that normally work?
So the printer retails at 6,295.
Right.
And you get everything you see there, and you get an accessory box with some sample resin in it, and the software. Yes, Photocentric Studio. As I said, it works on 2 PCs.
Yep. Mac as well, or only PC?
No, it does work on
Mac as well. Brilliant. Good. Yep.
So you get everything you need to get started, basically.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, guys and dolls. So join us on the next stand.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheers, thanks very much. Right, okay, welcome back to Dyze Designs. Let's take a look at some of the glorious things that you have. So first of all, we've got the Sentinel, right? So the Sentinel stuff is a filament sensor, but I mean, this is not your average filament sensor, is it? Really, this is machined aluminium, and it's the filament sensor that Harrods would sell. I mean, that's massively over-engineered for a filament sensor.
It's true. It's a very simple mechanism inside, but we tried to give it the nice touch that kind of differentiate it from the people using just a limit switch with a printed housing. Yeah. But there are still a few features that are nice from this product. So you can see an example right there. We can daisy chain it. So if you have multiple extruders, you only need to have one of your pins on the main board sensing it, because it doesn't matter which one is failing. You want to pause it as soon as possible. So kind of make the whole wire management quite easy by doing so.
So this is something that a lot of multi-material printers struggle with, right? Normally, you either have to have multiple pinouts that mean you can have multiple filament sensors that stop each extruder motor, or you have to accept the fact that because you've gone with multi-material, now you can't have a filament sensor anymore. And that's a really interesting solution where you can actually daisy chain them all off of one pin chain. That's really clever. So then we come on to the Pro Series. So the Pro Series looks really cool. Obviously we're dual drive here, we're all metal. I mean, you're using, what, a 20, is it 22, is that?
That's a 25.
25. So I mean, you've still got a serious amount of torque in that. Like, they'll still be able to push through like filament at speed.
Yeah, true. One of the main difference with this one compared to the other ones, we have two set of reduction gear. So our reduction ratio is 5.6 to 1 rather than 3 to 1.
Yeah.
So that definitely, as you said, give a small extra in torque.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is all metal, so I mean, this must be able to go up to like, what, like 450 or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. So we designed everything here to be able to withstand 500. So
500?
Yeah, the thermistor we provide, or the PT100, or the thermocouples, you can choose whatever sensor you want, are designed to withstand that temperature.
And I can see that you've got both sides of this. So you've got, if you want to do, say, an all-in-one direct drive, but you've also gone for designing it for a dual drive Bowden as well, so that you can sort of flex it a little bit.
Exactly. So just by reversing the direction of the motor, you can switch from a direct drive setup up to a Bowden setup. So there's nothing to add to the system other than put the filament the other way.
It's just where you mount it, which is really interesting, because normally, I mean, I suppose some of the hacked Creality machines where they just take the extruder they've got, throw it on the hot end, but you have so many issues with that, where just the mass that you're putting on the hot end at any one time is just huge.
True.
And you've got to then deal with the fact that you've also got an uneven gantry and everything else, and trying to do anything at speed with that much weight on the tool head is insanely complicated, unless you buy a Voron and use input shaper. But that's very, very interesting. And then we come on to the pièce de résistance, the new Horizon Orthus. So why don't you talk us through the two pieces that you've got? Oh, sorry, so the Horizon and the Orthus, isn't it? Not the Horizon, right? That's fair. Yeah,
true.
So the Horizon first, then.
So the Horizon is designed to use your nozzle as the sensing point, and it has a few adjustments on the back. So when you set your carriage with the bracket, which the Horizon is kind of in between the carriage and the extruder, so you need to compensate for the extruder weight so that you can have the minimal force. So a lot of people are still using springs on the bed, so you can fine tune it to get the minimum amount of force, so that you don't need to toy with the micro Z adjustment. So right now we can support from 0 grams up to 500 grams of extruder weight. So that's basically, it will support the Bondtech, the E3D, and all of the most famous extruder, as with ours. Ours is around 300 grams.
So obviously you're selling this with, in this instance, it's with the Extruder Pro, but we're actually saying that you could just buy
the Horizon on its own, and and you could mount a Hemera to it, or you could mount something like that, and it would work regardless of toolhead.
Exactly.
That's
so
impressive.
We have a few extra holes to mount from the Hemera.
Yep.
So on the motor, and for the Titan and also the Bondtech, we supply an extra plate to put it in between the well, the same way you would mount it on a cut plate like this one.
Amazing.
So this one will fit right there.
And then we come on to the Orthus. So there's a lot of people at the moment who are trying to bring out what they call smart sensors. They aren't smart at all. There's no logic in them. They are just an on and off switch. That's it. There's nothing smart or innovative about them. They're just slightly bigger versions of the plastic things that we've already been buying. But the Orthus is a different beast, because we're saying in that instance, am I right in saying you can detect filament movement as well as filament run out?
Exactly.
So being able to actually say, right, I know I can actually detect a clog, as opposed to just being able to detect whether I'm in or out of filament, which is a huge piece. I mean, it's pretty much what Spaghetti Detective and things like that were initially trying to do until they, fell apart, but didn't stop all the development. So the Orthus is that. It is a truly smart sensor that you can mount, and all of the logic is done in that. There's no special firmware or anything?
Not at all. So the Orthus has the same kind of signal as the Sentinel. So you power it with a 0 volt and a 5 volt, for example, or 3.3, and there's a signal that is simply high-low pulses which match the speed of your filament.
Fantastic. So I mean, the reality is the space that you're in, there aren't that many people who are playing at this level. So you have E3D who are doing a few bits and pieces, and they've brought out the Hemera, and BitQ have copied it and everything else. But there's not really that many people who are doing genuine innovation inside of extruders. I mean, Bondtech's what? A 8-year-old design now, as is, the Hemera is only really a shrunk down version of a Titan anyway. This is the first time I've seen something that is actually new and is continuing to develop inside of that ecosystem. And indeed, someone who has developed something that doesn't even need to work with their extruder, that you could put that on a Creality toolhead or whatever. That's something that you've made it, and it does work with your extruders, but you could actually buy it and retrofit it to near any machine that has the ability to mount it.
True. So, I believe that there's a big market into making the user's life easier, and small accessories like this are very useful for that.
So I mean, and also everything's coming with tungsten carbide nozzles, which is insane. So that's sort of, again, that's overkill for the most part. I mean, the only really high temperature stuff we've worked with was a company called Gufu, and they have an extruder that's like a 400-degree hot end. But the reality is all it really is a beefed up V6 that they've then put a massive cartridge in.
Yeah.
And that's how they get to the higher temperatures. They've just tried to make it so that in theory it doesn't melt, and then that should be fine. But this is really built from the ground up to be a high hot end. So in that instance, if we take the Gufu for example, the high temperature Gufu kit cannot print low temperatures. I've actually had the same issue with the Fetus Dragonfly, where they did I think it was the BMO, and that's meant to go to like 400 degrees, but it just it cannot print at low temperatures. Like if you're trying to print PLA or PETG, really struggles. So how are these doing with sort of the lower end pieces as well as the sort of higher end peaks and Ultims and things like that?
So for the low end, low temperature polymers, it works as well as any. There's nothing different. So we have the air coolings, and if you're running in a standard environment, it's going to perform fine. For example, the titanium heat break titanium has a tendency to stick more than stainless, but we have some kind of ceramic coating. It's a chemical reaction with titanium that makes some kind of oxide coat on it. So by having that, it's going to be a lot easier to extrude PETG and PLA, because with the heat they tend to soften more and they are harder to push. But with that coating, it's going to make it very easy for those polymers. And then for the high temperature ones, we sell add-on product for a liquid cooling. So we remove the fan, we put a liquid cooling blocks, and same for the extruder. And we also have a high temperature rated stepper motors. So everything is set to work in a liquid cooling loop. So when you have a very hot environment, the whole extrusion system stays cool.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for letting us take a look around.
My pleasure.
It's great to review some of these things moving forwards. Thanks very much for joining us, guys and dolls. We'll see you on the next one. Right, guys and dolls. So that was the TCT show. So what did we think? Was it worth the trip? I don't know. So I mean, I'm going to be honest and say this was really heavy on the manufacturing side. So this was a real industry focused, a lot of B2B companies selling to other companies. And a lot of service-based pieces. Obviously on the channel we try to focus on consumer/prosumer. So there's definitely some stuff in there that was really interesting. I really liked seeing the new Opus from Photocentric. The new S5 Ultimaker was really interesting. The Dyze extruder. I'm definitely going to try and get my hands on one of those to be able to show you. But the honest reality is it didn't feel like it was for us. Right? It didn't feel like it was for our community. When we came in 2019, there were a lot more of the Chinese manufacturers here. It's where we met Gufu, it's where we met 3D Talk, we met G-Tech, we met Creality, and at this show, really, it was only really Creality that we managed to meet that was in that space. Now we got to see E3D, right? And they're doing some really cool things with the new Hemera. We got to see Dyze with their really cool extruder, and we got to see a couple of other people as well. But was this really a show this year for us as sort of hobbyists / sort of semi-pro people? I don't know that it was. There was a lot of industrial SLS. There was a lot of industrial CAD and things like that. There were stalls that we didn't show you just because they were so non-applicable to the type of things that we do. Post-processing for metal SLS printing and that kind of thing it wasn't targeted at us. That being said, we've really enjoyed the show. We've met some really cool people. We met our first fan, who, if he's watching this, we met our first fan. So that was really cool. We got to meet up with Sam Prentice. Go and check out his channel. I'll put his link in the video description as well. And there was a lot of stuff here to see, and it was interesting. But it could have been a little bit better. There could have been more people here. There could have been more companies coming to see us, and I mean, it is what it is. We are where we are, and I hope you enjoyed watching what we put together. We'll see you all soon.